Mark Green, folks. Don't forget, folks, the Constitution.org. Ladies and gentlemen, as promised, a very special guest on board with us. She is the Democratic nominee for the governor of Georgia. We all support her. We all love her. She is history making every single day. The great and wonderful Stacey Abrams joins us now. Madam Governor, how are you this morning?
I am well. Thank you so much, Mark, for such a generous introduction.
Yeah, well, congratulations on everything. We're so proud of you and happy. How's the campaign going?
Things are wonderful. I will say this. I am still in a primary, so I've got to get through May 22nd, but things are looking great. We're ahead in the polls. We are ahead in outreach to voters, and we are running a people-powered campaign, so we're very excited.
And obviously, Stacey, this is an historic campaign and challenging. We're talking about Georgia. We're talking about being African-American, you being African-American. We're talking about you being a woman. What inspired you to even take this on, Stacey?
I grew up in Mississippi, the daughter of a college librarian and a shipyard worker who were both very involved in the civil rights movement as teenagers. And my parents, at the age of 40, when I was a junior in high school, decided to become United Methodist ministers. They wanted us to really understand their commitment to social justice. And I grew up with a deep and abiding hatred for poverty. I think it's immoral. I think it's economically inefficient. And I wanted to use my talents, my opportunities, to challenge and to defeat poverty. I think if we can do it in the Deep South, we can do it everywhere.
So what has to be done in order for you to win? We've got to register more and more people to vote in Georgia, don't we?
We do, but I will say this. Over the last 2.5 years, between 2014 and 2016, I led the New Georgia Project, an organization I founded, and we have registered more than 200,000 people of color. Right now, we have a sufficient number of voters to win this election, but we always need to keep the pipeline filled. We need more and more people to register because, as we know, voter suppression is always out there, and so we can't count on what we've done. But if we register more voters and we turn out the voters we have, Democrats can win in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, and it's about time. Does Alabama and what happened with Doug Jones kind of serve as a template for us in Georgia?
Absolutely. Alabama is actually a much more conservative state than Georgia, much less racially diverse, and yet we know that if you take the time to reach out to communities that go unseen and unheard, that are often taken for granted by Democratic candidates, if you do the work, we can win. And my campaign has already done more than 600,000 voter outreach attempts, and this is in a primary. We are going to keep doing this work heading into the general. And we know that African American, Latino, Asian Pacific Islander, rural voters have often been ignored by candidates. And we know that we can pull this coalition together with progressive and moderate white voters, and we can win this election.
Well, speaking of some of those progressive and moderate white voters, Stacey, white voters in general, are you finding that they are interested in your campaign, maybe even some somewhat moderately conservative Georgians? Are they showing interest in your campaign?
They are. We are having extraordinary turnout. We've had more than 140 events across the state of Georgia. And what is happening is that they know I bring to this job an unmatched experience. I'm an entrepreneur. I was the top Democrat in the state. But I also bring a consistent, authentic leadership that Georgians can count on. I can talk about the fact that I can educate bold and ambitious children. I talk about how we build a thriving and diverse economy. I have proven leadership to create an engaged and responsive government. And that cuts across every community. Because what people really want, they want their children to be educated, they want their jobs to be sound and to pay well, and they want their government to work for them and not against them. And that cuts across every community.
Stacey Abrams with us, folks, 25 minutes before the hour. Of course, you mentioned the economy, Stacey, and there's a lot of conversation about the state of our economy, the state of jobs, the state of wages. And frankly, one of the things that even a lot of Trump voters won't admit they have in common with everyone else, and including African Americans. What about Georgia's economy? How would you transform and strengthen Georgia's economy itself? What's the next generation of jobs in Georgia?
Georgia has a strong economy for some. If you look at Atlanta, you look at Savannah, Columbus, there are places that are doing well. But Georgia has 159 counties. We have one of the highest poverty rates in the nation, and we have pockets of poverty that go unseen. One of our opportunities is to invest in small businesses. And I'm not just talking about tech businesses. I'm talking about the dry cleaner and the home health care aide, making certain we're creating these community businesses and we're giving them access to capital. I started a small business back in 2010 with my business partner because we couldn't get access to capital. And we worked with a President Obama-era program called the State Small Business Jobs Act. And through that program, we've helped create more than 2,000 jobs, create or retain 2,000 jobs in Georgia. If I can do that with a small nonprofit, a small business, imagine what I can do with the entire economy of Georgia.
Indeed. Speaking of the economy of Georgia, you all played a big role, especially in Atlanta, in the very thing everybody's talking about these days, Black Panther. They shot some of that down there in Atlanta, didn't
Absolutely. Georgia is the number one place for filmmaking right now, and I want that to continue. But to your point, it's about expanding access. It's about making certain that diverse communities are engaged in every stage of filmmaking, that they're providing craft services, that we have hairstylists, that we have grips and gaffers, but that we also have writers and producers and actors who know that Georgia is not just an auxiliary to Hollywood, but that Georgia is the Hollywood of the South.
Yeah, no, and whoever would have thought that years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, for that matter. Stacey Abrams with us. You mentioned education, too, Stacey. We just saw this really frightening report that's come out in the past 48 hours about a young black male from a well-off African-American family has almost no chance, or really no chance, of surpassing or achieving equal success as a poor white male. What's your reaction to that story, especially in the context of your education agenda?
It's critically important that we understand that it's not enough to want one thing, that we've got to do everything right. We have to focus on education, but we also have to focus on how education is too often used as a way to target and divert young people, especially young black people, and particularly young black men, from success. And so that's why I have always been a staunch supporter of public education. My opponent, unfortunately, has done a lot to help dismantle public education, but I've fought for it. But more than that, we have to provide wraparound services, making certain that we meet children at every point of their needs. And that includes the kind of behavioral interventions that mean we aren't putting these children into school suspension or kicking them out of school, but that we're helping them build the resilience they need. But it's also about making sure we have criminal justice reform that ensures they never go into the system, that we treat juveniles as juveniles, that we give them help, and that we make certain all along the way we are propping up, supporting, and lifting up our young black men and young black women. And unfortunately, if we go deeper into that report, Latino families, so that we're never putting our children into harm's way, that we believe in their potential and their success.
Yeah. You mentioned Latino families too, Stacey. What's the electorate, the electoral demographics of Latinos, after all, in Georgia?
So in Georgia, we have a very strong Latino population. It's about 9.5% of the population, but it's only about 4% of the voting population. And that's one of the reasons voter registration is still so critical. Getting African Americans, getting Latinos registered to vote is going to be key to transforming Georgia's electorate. Georgia's going to be a majority-minority state by 2025, 2026. And my mission is to make certain that every family, that every person owns their franchise and uses it. Because you can't fix education if you don't have folks involved in school board elections. You can't fix the economy if they're not voting for their state legislators and their city council members to ensure that gentrification doesn't outpace good jobs coming into a community. We have to think about these things in parallel, and that's why I'm running, because I'm the only candidate, Democrat or Republican, who's been in the private sector, the public sector, and the nonprofit sector, and understands how they can work together to change our communities.
Stacey Abrams sharing her vision for Georgia with us, folks. We're all, as you all know, Stacey, we're all marching in Washington on this Saturday with regards to gun safety. What's your vision for that?
I'm going to be doing the same march, only down in Dahlonega, Georgia, because I am the only candidate who was in the legislature who has never received the stamp of approval from the NRA, Democrat or Republican. I'm the only one who can proudly boast about my D's and F's every single year. But I'm also the only candidate who co-sponsored legislation to ban assault weapons. I'm the only one who voted against terrible legislation in Georgia that forces law enforcement to sell confiscated weapons back onto the streets. But I also believe that we have to expand universal background checks. We have to provide for extreme risk protective orders. We also have to build out our mental health and substance abuse treatment capacity by expanding Medicaid in Georgia. But I will say this. I want us to be very clear. Mental illness does not create violence or doesn't mean violence, and violence doesn't mean that you have a mental health issue. But we have to address both of those aspects if we want to make certain that we're protecting our families.
Absolutely. A very, very good point. Stacey Abrams with us, folks. So, Stacey, does the ongoing drama that we see in the Trump campaign, or in the Trump presidency, I should say, is no longer a campaign, does that help you? Does that kind of stuff, when you talk to everyday Georgians, are you sort of representing a clean glass next to his dirty glass?
I think so, but I think it's less about his particular bad actions and his racism and his bigotry and his anti-womanhood, his general problematic existence, but it's about the enthusiasm it's creating in our electorate. People understand that votes matter. They understand that their voices matter. What they need is a candidate that they can rally behind, a message they can believe in, and a ground game that helps get them to the polls. And that's the kind of campaign I'm running. My job isn't to defeat Donald Trump. My job is to serve and lift up the voices of Georgians, because if we do that, we win not only in 2018, we win in 2020, we win in 2022, and we change the South forever.
And lastly, Stacey Abrams, I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's really amazing and inspirational, what you're doing. Do you ever just pinch yourself and say, wait a minute, I'm a black woman running for governor of Georgia, not some state in the north or the northeast or even California. You're running for the governorship of Georgia, Stacey Abrams. Do you ever just trip out yourself?
I am deeply humbled to be in this position. It's because I have extraordinary parents and an amazing family that stood up for me and lifted me up. I was recently, and there's been conversations about some choices I've made about my finances, and I want to say this. I want to not only be known as the first black woman governor, I want to be known as a governor who didn't come to the table with millions in the bank, but who's elected to serve because I understand the real lives of Georgians. I want to be known as a governor who understands the challenges that everyday families face. And the fact that I'm black, the fact that I'm a woman, that isn't why I'm running, but it signals to people that if I can do this, we can transform leadership across our country. Because if we can do this in Georgia, if we can do this in the Deep South, we can transform how we think about everyone's capacity, and we can change the face of leadership in America.
Well, and you're right. But I would also add that you running as a black woman is also important, because for far too long, our people have not been represented. It's not been since Reconstruction.
Absolutely.
That we've had the kind of representation we deserve. And we know that's the black belt. We know the population of African Americans in Georgia. We know we built this country, and particularly built the state of Georgia. So it's high time we can see ourselves. We're not going to make it, Stacey. These kids coming behind us, which unfortunately may be the first generation at risk, Stacey, of not doing as well as we're doing. We're supposed to leave them better off. If they can't see someone like you running for office and winning, that's a shame. And they need you. They need all of us for that kind of inspiration. So I'm thankful not just for you joining us this morning. I'm thankful that you're doing this. I'm behind you. It ought to be obvious and self-evident, folks. I endorsed Stacey a long time ago, but for the record, I'm endorsing Stacey Abrams for the governorship of Georgia. Get out and register to vote. check with family and friends in Georgia. Make sure they're registered. And this may sound like a small thing, but it's not. Stacey, kids in college in Georgia should register to vote in the state, shouldn't they?
Absolutely. If you go to our website, StaceyAbrams.com, we can tell you all about the election, the dates. Voter registration for the primary ends on April 24th. Early voting starts April 30th, and the election day is May 22nd, so now is the time to do this. College students can transform our state. There are enough college students and their parents and their family members that if we work together, we can win. And you're absolutely right. If you are in a college in the state of Georgia, you live here long enough, you can register to vote here, and we'd love to have your voice.
Support this together, this very together, sister, folks. StaceyAbrams.com. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us. Let's not make this the last time we talk. We're here for you. If we need to beat the bushes and mobilize in any way using these airwaves, just let us know. We're here for you, okay?
Mark, this is an amazing opportunity, and I just appreciate your support. Thank you so much.
All right. Stacey Abrams, ladies. Thank you, Stacey.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. StaceyAbrams.com, ladies and gentlemen. This is historic. This is the real deal. We'll get ready to take a quick break. We'll come right back. Get your call. Sirius XM Progress 127. Get woke. Get ready for impeachment. This is MIP.
Love supreme, love supreme, love supreme.